Good afternoon once again. My name is Muritala. I'm from Nigeria. What I do is performance management, basically, building for organization. Yes, today I want to talk about building performance culture and how do we do that. I can say we've been talking about culture. I love to talk about culture. Thank you for the last speaker. That was an excellent one. Please, let's encourage him well. I didn't hear a lot of encouragement. Let's clap for him. I don't know if he's still in the hall. The most interesting part of what he's teaching us is that culture, I think Peter Drucker said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. No matter how beautiful your strategy is, your culture is wrong. It consumes the whole thing. So my peculiarity is on performance management. When we talk about performance culture, meanwhile, we've worked with so many organizations in the public sector and private sector in the last 10 years. With the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Federal Inland Revenue, with government agencies, private organizations. We help them to build their performance system in order to build the culture, that performance culture within the organization. These are a few of the organizations that we've worked with in the last 10 years. However, when we talk about performance culture, there is a misconception which I actually want to clear. Now, the first misconception that I've seen when I talk or do anything regarding performance management is for people to think that performance appraisal is performance management. It is not. Performance appraisal is not performance management. So anytime anybody talks about performance management, the first thing that comes to mind is you are HR, that it's about employee performance. Performance appraisal is just one aspect of performance management. It's an aspect of it. It's essential, agreed, it's important. But it's not just about appraising the employee performance, and I'm going to touch on it. And I say this, when we talk about building that culture, it's about building a system. If you don't have a system, you can't build a culture. People naturally, if you talk about people's culture, I always say this, that people naturally want to disobey rules, right? People want to break traffic lights. So when you get to a country where people comply, you think it's just their willingness to comply. No. That good culture that you're seeing, that people are complying, is because there is a system that gives out consequences for disobeying. So to build a culture, you must build a framework, a system that helps to build a culture in itself. So if you want to build a performance culture, you need to actually build a system architecture that makes people to want to comply and becomes a culture. And it starts from measuring. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So the second misconception, when we talk about performance management in an organization, people feel, oh, they want to check us. They want to be monitoring how we do things. And people are not free anymore. It's not for promotion or bonuses. The main purpose of performance system is for improvement. When we jettison that part, it loses its purpose. It's about improvement. How do we keep improving? If you are not improving, you can't build a culture. People must see that it's for improvement. Yes, there could be sanctions. There could be reward. But the main primary purpose is to improve. And that's a part that we must understand when we talk about performance management. How do we improve in itself? And when we talk about that, let me pick her brain a little. I love to ask this question. I'll be glad who can give an answer to this question. Anyone? D. Okay. Any other person? One more trial. Anyone? C. Okay. So I'll give 500 Indian rupees whoever can get the answer right. All of the above. Okay. It's actually A, C, and E. Oh, so I can keep my money. Okay, that's fine. All right. Now, there is a relationship between performance measurement and performance management. So we must understand both. Now, you can't manage if you don't measure. Measurement is key to management in itself. So it's like the foundation. So it's like a Venn diagram. So everything, now when you said all of the above, you could have been right if I had not put only. So everything there is under performance management. But what is in measurement is in management. But what is in management is not in measurement. But everything is under performance management in itself. So when we talk about measurement, now measurement is key and it's important. It is that it's about data collection. It's about setting those metrics that helps you to collect empirical data. So I'll give an example. Let's say that, for instance, you wake up in the morning, you get into your car, driving to the office, right? And then your car is working perfectly well, and you drive out of your compound. You know, the first instinct is you look at your dashboard, right? Today, cars that are produced gives you virtually all the information on your dashboard. You see everything about the car. Now, if you look at your dashboard and your dashboard is not responding, what would you do? Your car is working, it's not giving any sound, but the dashboard suddenly becomes blank. What would you do? You keep driving? You stop driving. Okay, so, and you do what? I once asked in a hall, and the women in class say, we'll park the car, we'll call our husband. That he should come and carry his car. Am I right? That's when the car becomes the husband's car. Okay, so you stop driving. So why do you stop driving? But the car is working perfectly well. So why did you stop driving? You don't know how much fuel, you don't know the temperature level of the car. It means that, what does the dashboard do? The dashboard provides information, data, metrics, real-time data, empirical data, telling you the performance of your car. It's the same thing in a business setting. That it's not about, so when people talk about performance management, they talk about appraisal. Even appraisal, then we then say we want to measure quarterly, biannual, annually. So how does it feel if your car does not give you information as it's happening and you only have information quarterly? How does that work? That the way your car is performing, you can, in fact, let's even say that you can only know your fuel level, temperature level only once a day for your car. Does it sound normal? Exactly. It's the same thing. How then do you run an organization without data? How then do we run a country without data? Without data when you need it and how you need it. It's the same system that you must be able to build it in such a way that you can see things as it's happening. And that's what it means that you must be able to do. And when you are able to do this, it allows you to be able to take decisions. So the most essential part that I have seen working on it is about building key performance indicators around your business, not just the employees, but totality of the business. Building your key performance indicators. And another thing I need to say, I see a lot of people talk about KPIs, we talk about KRA, a lot of things. And when I see things, I'll be like, okay, is this actually a KPI? Now, if you have a KPI system in your organization, how many of us do use KPI in our organization? Quite a number of people. Now, if your KPI is not empirical, there's nothing like qualitative KPIs. It's about quantitative. So if your KPIs are not quantitative and not data-driven, then it's not a KPI. You're probably writing something else. There's nothing within the organization that you cannot measure empirically. If you can't measure it empirically, then it's not KPI around it. So you must be able to do that, because the blood for KPI is data. And data is life. You must be able to collect data to drive your KPIs. And that's very critical. And you must be able to document. Now, not just collect data. So if you do employee appraisal this year, you don't just abandon it and don't look at it again. You must be able to keep your data over a period of years to do comparison, to see how you have improved. Don't forget, it's about improvement over time. So you must do proper documentation, and you must be able to analyze it. And that's another competency you must have within the organization, to analyze your data and to be able to present your report that is convincing. And then takes me to the next aspect, the performance management in itself. Now, I call it that integrated capability. Is integrated of an organization, because performance management involves your vision statement, your mission statement, your core values, your strategy. Even the core values that you have in an organization, you must be able to build strategic objectives around it. Because today, our core values are just hanging on the wall. We write it and we hang it on the wall. Am I right? But how do we actionalize even the core values in itself? So it's integrated. You must have the competency to build that. And that's the only way you can deliver sustainable success in an organization. That's how you can build that culture. And it focuses on two things. And you can see, by improving the performance, improving the performance of systems and people. But today, when we talk about performance, we focus on the people. We don't focus on the system. Even the best set of people will not perform if you have a wrong system. How many of us are familiar with Formula One? Okay. So there is always a pit call during the Formula One race where they change the 4 tires. How long does it take to change the tires?
The last year, the best was 1 second, 2 seconds.
1.82 seconds is the world record to change the 4 tires. 1.82 seconds. So it is not about that driver that wins the race, but the system that supports his own performance. So the best of your employees may not perform if the system does not give room to it. And because we don't build that system, a lot of organizations had issues during COVID. So I got so many calls, I had to have so many sessions, and people were like, oh, how do we measure employee performance? Now they're working remotely, virtual work system. How do we measure? The truth is, there is no difference. There's no difference in measuring employee performance when they were at work and when they work from home. The challenge is we'll be measuring the wrong thing. We'll be measuring employee by attendance. So now there's no physical attendance, so there's a problem. So we're measuring employees by seeing their face because they pretend that like they're working and they're probably watching Netflix. And but once you see them at work or they're trying to do something, oh, that employee closes late. It's a hard-working employee. He doesn't close with everybody. The guy is busy applying for another job using your, or he has an exam that he's reading and preparing for. So he closes at 8 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. And you assume he's a very hard-working guy. Am I right? Exactly. So, but now people had to work from home, then it became a challenge. Now it doesn't matter where people work from, if you have actually set what they are meant to be measured on and make it extremely objective and not subjective, where employee performance is not dependent on whether you like the person's face or not. That's the tradition. So your performance is determined by whether your boss likes your face or not, so there's always the eye service. If people are measured by what they do, the culture will be there. People will not do eye service. People will know they need to do their work. So it means you need to set that appropriate system in place. So the system complements the hard working of the people. So to get the best out of the people, you must make sure you establish a proper working system. Your processes must be clear. The system, okay, how many of us conduct performance appraisal for our processes? But we do appraisal for our people, right? The same appraisal you do for people, you must conduct appraisal for your... How many of us have SOPs? Your standard operating procedure. So how often do you conduct appraisal for your procedure? You set up that procedure to achieve something. Am I right? So how often do you check whether that process is achieving what it set it out to achieve? So the way you set KPIs for people, you must set KPIs for your processes. That's when you would know whether it's working or not, and you can do your BPI or BPE, business process improvement, or the engineering. How many of us do performance appraisal for our laptops, for the systems we use at work? So you can imagine if you give somebody, those old Pentium 1 system to work, how does the person deliver when working now is at the speed of light? Do you understand? So even the best person will not deliver if you give such. So it's important to build that. And I don't want to waste time on this one. Let me just move on. So part of what you see, when we talk about performance management, somebody picked D the other time. I actually love that. It's understand the reasons behind performance. It's a key component we need to have as CEOs, as managers, that we must understand the reasons behind performance. Now, note, I did not say understand the reasons behind bad performance. Because it's only when performance is bad that we go back to the drawing table, that we start asking questions, what is wrong? No. Even when your performance is good, even when you meet your target or you exceed your target, you must know how you did it, how it was achieved. Because if you don't know how you did it, you can't repeat it. Then it's not sustainable. That's the only way you can build a culture of continuous success. So you don't just try to understand. So if you give an employee a target and the employee exceeds the target, you don't. There's a tradition in my country, I don't know if it's convenient here as well. So when you give an employee a target, the moment the employee exceeds the target, the next target is higher than the previous target. I always laugh when I see that tradition without asking questions as to why you actually got that, how you achieved that target. So it's always quite funny that the next thing is not increasing the target. The first thing is to understand how it was done and see if it's a one-off. Because there are some targets that you meet that is just a one-off that you can't repeat. So by the time you are giving the next target, you have set up the person for failure. It even happens in an organization. So there was a client that had a target in the year 2014 for 2015. And in 2015, that year, the target for that 2015, they exceeded by almost 600%. And the business expanded. It was booming. And then they set the target for 2016, benchmarking against what they achieved in 2015, not the target for 2015. But then they didn't meet it. They only achieved about 30-35% of it. Okay, 2017, the same thing. So when we came in 2017, it was quite simple. And we did a deeper analysis, performance analysis, and we found out that the reason why they exceeded the target in 2015, it was because it was an election year in my country. It was peculiar to the reason why they made so much money. So it is very wrong to then compare 2015 with 2016. So they can go and benchmark 2015 against 2019, which is the next election year. So when you understand that, you know that the next thing is not continuous increment. All right, so when you understand those kind of little things, it allows employees to know why they're achieving things. Then it helps you to begin to reallocate resources. Then I like to talk about these two red ones are what I want to really lay emphasis on. Engage and motivate employees towards goals achievement. Now, you want to build a performance culture, and your employees do not know why your organization exists. That is very common. At the end of last year, towards the end of last quarter, organizations always do strategy session. Am I right? We're having strategy session. So the leadership of that organization goes for a strategy session, and when they come back, they keep the outcome of the strategy session on their systems. So the average employee comes to work. He does not even have an idea of what the organization wants to achieve. So how are they going to get committed? They will come to work. So in most cases, so I have a problem with job description, with JDs. I don't like it. So I don't use it. We don't use it in my office. Because the strategy and focus of the organization changes all the time. But job description, you keep carrying the one they were given 10 years ago. And then you measure the employees based on the job description, so they perform. Now, what you then see is, you see high level of people performance, but low level of organizational performance. And you start wondering, there is no synchronization. Because we don't keep people up to date around it. Because we build it wrongly. So I always look at this cycle. The first thing you must first of all get right as an organization is your strategic focus as an organization in itself. And that's what you build your structure on. That's what you build everything on in itself. Now, if you're able to do that, you then build. Now, developing strategy is not always a challenge. It's about the execution of it. Harvard Review, one of the Harvard Review says that only 1 out of every 10 organizations actually execute their strategy. The point is that when we build the strategy, we don't build an execution plan around it itself. And then we don't build a measurement system not to be able to manage anything. So I have 2 minutes more, right? So let me just talk about these 2 things quickly. So when we talk about, so let me skip this. I've talked about it. There's one part I want to say on how to build this structure. One of the things that's going to help you to build a proper structure is to have a well-defined process. Build well-defined processes within the organization. And that's the way people can have the culture of doing the right thing. Because you're bringing people from different backgrounds, different culture. So if you don't build that internal processes that makes them to confine on how to do things, then you can't build that performance culture itself. So it's important to know that. And when you don't align people, you have things like people working in isolation. There's no synergy. Every department is working in isolation. They're keeping their things to themselves. Everybody has their own hidden agenda. Some leaders always like to do divide and rule. It's not healthy for your organization. You want someone to come and sneak and report the other people to you. You're killing your own organization yourself if you do that. And that's the truth. And most of us business owners, we get too much involved in operations. You want to know how every one penny is spent itself. All right? And most people do not know the importance of data. Any organization that doesn't drive data today is going to go into extinction. We all know that that's the next thing. So let me just talk about a bit of it in. At any rate, you can reach me on this contact if you want to. And if you want me to have, because I stay in Nigeria, I can have a virtual session with your team. I can't finish these slides, don't worry. If you invite me, I will do a 1-hour session free for your organization. If you send me a mail, don't worry. So that I can tell you how to build that performance culture in itself. All right? So it's about building a system architecture, a simple system architecture that can help you to build that performance culture and linking everything together itself. And when you're able to do that, you can achieve a high-level performance success itself. All right? Okay, on that note, let me say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. This was very enlightening, very good, a very engaging presentation.
Thank you.
You talked about KPIs and they need to be qualitative.
Yes.
If they are qualitative, they are not KPIs. And you also mentioned that vision, mission, value should be part of the measurement. How do you measure values quantitatively?
Okay, so let me give an example. Okay, so there's a dry cleaning firm that we did something like that for, and this was the same question. So I asked them, one of their core value is care. C-A-R-E. Okay, so the question is, your core value is care. What do you care for? They care for their customers' clothing, right? When they bring it for dry cleaning. So how do you care for the clothing? How do we know that you have cared for the clothing? Part of what you want to see a reduction in complaints about damage, a reduction in damaged clothes. If you care for it. That's a metric. That means you can measure it.
The most popular ones are integrity and mutual trust. So how do we measure that?
Now, when people come up with integrity, now the most interesting part of integrity is it varies with different organizations. So the trap people fall into when they build core values is to look at dictionary meaning of those words. So when I do strategy for organization, no, don't consider the literal meaning. What does integrity mean to you as an organization? What does it show? By the time you can define it, then we can build those metrics out of it to show whether your organization has that integrity and trust. In construction, integrity, they test integrity. So, it's a combination of core value and value driver and what's the other one that build this core value? All right. Now, integrity is used for people in most cases, but in construction, they use integrity for building. They test the integrity of the building, and it must pass this test. And there is a standard measurement to show that it has passed this test, so you can measure anything. Okay. Now, it's that, you see, the issue of the tool is always a challenge. So, people use balance scorecard, people use OKR, people use MBO. You know, the simple thing I give people is this. Whichever tool you want to use, just take it like you want to, that people ask which tool is better. So to me, it's just like you want to boil water. Whether you're using gas to boil the water, or you're using the boiling ring, or you're using the kettle, at the end of the day, what do you have? Hot water. Am I right? It's simple. Whichever works for you, you use.
Yeah, but is there any preferred tool that is used in your Nigeria? You know, so OKR or BSC, which is more popularly used?
Use BSC and OKR most times. Yes, those two are most popular.
Sure.
Actually.
Thanks.
Yes. Can I take one more?
Okay.
I hope it's simple.
So in organizations, a lot of times when it comes to performance management, there is rework, right?
There
Because
is.
rework. You have to keep doing things over and over again iteratively because of what they call as epiphanies, right? So they seem to feel that things are changing, and therefore a certain task has been given, a dashboard has been built, analytics have been created. That's reworked differently. You've got to present it differently, and that happens over and over again, right? How does one break the cycle of rework systematically? Is there any preferred method of breaking the rework
I didn't get the
cycle?
question. Sorry, please. Can you
So-
try to explain?
So in organizations, what tends to happen is when you're measuring performance,
Okay.
you actually come up with certain metrics. In a lot of organizations, what seems to be happening now is that those metrics are constantly shifting because they do believe after maybe a month that that metric is no longer valid. We need to change our metrics. This is on review. Then after another month, the review comes in. They feel, oh, those previous metrics were not good. We need to change it again. So how frequent is frequent? And what can be done to avoid this cycle of reworks? Because they're implementing the change that you said they should. You should change frequently. You should audit what you're doing, right? And they find that they're doing it wrong every single time. So they iterate. And that creates more problems, or is there a way around it?
Okay, so it's a bit complex to respond to that, but let me try. Now, the truth is, it's different with various organizations why they are changing. There are some metrics that won't change because they're constant. There are some metrics that will change because of what is happening in the environment, because of so many things that is considered in itself. So, because you can't keep doing the same thing the same way and expect a different result. Now, perhaps you want to get a different result, you may need to change some metrics. That always happens times. So, the frequency of changing is not fixed. It's also dependent on the organization and the need at that point in time that could determine it. So if I really have a deeper understanding, it becomes a lot easier for me to see why they're changing it. Probably they didn't. You know, when we talk about, for instance, strategy, I always say strategy is a guesswork into the future that has not existed. Now, when you're confronted with the reality in itself, then your strategy may change. So things could happen. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ayo, for that.
Thank you very
insightful
much.
session.